Your child's temper tantrum. These 5 tips will make you unstoppable. He gets the ice cream from the freezer basically anytime he wants. Yesterday, he asked for a toy online, and you bought it for him. It's been a long day, it's time for bed, and we tell him to put the video game away, and behold, there it is, the temper tantrum. You want to stop the temper tantrum immediately, but it's an emotional process. I'll give some tips to managing and dealing with the temper tantrum when it happens. Here are the 5 tips you can apply, in order, when the temper tantrum sets off. Here are the 5 tips you can apply, in order, when the temper tantrum sets off. First, become aware of the source of the tantrum. Second, de-escalate and deflate. 3, communicate with a plan in mind. 4, consistency, 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 consistency. I can say it forever. Consistency, 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 consistency. Last, reflect and revisit. This one is very magical if done right, but timing is key. I've seen this work in the field with hundreds of children in my experience as a clinical counselor. Tantrums and meltdowns are very common identified behavior, which can range from annoying and sometimes kind of dangerous. Before we dive into the tantrum tips a little bit more, let's dive into the science. Why do temper tantrums occur? Why do children have temper tantrums? What are tantrums? What's the purpose of these things? Tantrums occur as a response to an immediate and an unwanted change. They are a type of coping mechanism, albeit an unhealthy coping mechanism. That's what they are. Let's think about it for a second. Even us, as emotionally developed adults, feel like having tantrums, and sometimes do. Someone cuts us off on the road, the internet is too slow, our partner did not wish us well in our anniversary. Things frustrate us as well, but we have had more time in our life, more wisdom, to develop our brain and our coping skills. Children, unfortunately, are not in the same boat. They're still developing. The stage of competency. There was this guy. His name was Erickson. He's a developmental psychologist. He invented the 8 stages of psychosocial development. That is a real thing. Where the competency stage of these 8 stages, the competency stage, was ages ranging from 5 to 12. 5 to 12 is, of course, a time of adolescence. We see a lot of temper tantrums at this age, at this stage. And it is a pivotal age of learning healthy and effective coping skills. We inevitably see a lot of temper tantrums at this age. And this time, 5 to 12, is a pivotal time for learning healthy and effective coping skills. And that's what we're there for. The happy drug. You're most likely aware of the chemical messenger in the brain called dopamine. Dopamine is known as the happy drug. And this drug is responsible for those feelings of happiness, pleasure, and desire. This is a good chemical in the brain, and it's natural, but too much is not good and neither is too little. But you know what else is not good? Having a lot and immediately having it taken away from you. And that's when we most likely see temper tantrums. There's a WebMD article right here I'm sharing with you, and this explains more about dopamine specifically. If you're listening to the podcast, the link is in the description. And if you are here following us on YouTube, we also put this article link in the description. Throwing a tantrum. So the time has come again. Your child is throwing that tantrum. So how do we deal with this child throwing this tantrum? Before we get into the tips, let me give you one more piece of hard truth. The best way to deal with a tantrum is to set clear expectations and limits before the onset of the tantrum. Clear expectations and communication limits the shock factor. I'll explain more. Managing the temper tantrum before it occurs, let's refer to it as the pre-tantrum. I just made that tip up. It's not a science thing and it's not in any book. We're just making it up for now. But working with the tantrum before it occurs is the most effective. We wrote a blog article on the pre-tantrum, on working with the tantrum before it occurs. And if you want to visit that blog article, the link is in the description of this podcast. For you all following us on YouTube, we have a link to that article in the description. But let's say your child is having the tantrum now, and you need those now tips. Let's move ahead with the tantrum tips that I've seen work in the field with hundreds of children in my experience as a clinical counselor. The 5 tips to the temper tantrum. What led to the tantrum? What was happening before? Be aware of the tantrum source. Be aware of the source of the tantrum. I guarantee you it didn't come from just nowhere. Remember the examples in the beginning of this blog? The toy, the ice cream, putting the video game away before bedtime. Think about the elements which give your kiddo joy or pleasure. If your child is involved with an activity that gives her joy or pleasure, rest assured that putting a pause to it and stopping it is going to definitely be a tantrum opportunity. This is called awareness. This type of awareness is known in the clinical world, just to share with you, as transitions. Awareness, or transitions, as we mentioned, is a skill that can pretty much benefit a parent anytime. De-escalate. Serve as a stabilizer to the situation. Part of being an effective parent means you can be a stabilizer when situations get rocky. This means having a respected presence while being seen by your child as a respected and loving authority. This is an art, and it definitely takes practice. For the parent, mentally, be in self-control and make sure you are emotionally collected. Use your intuition as a parent to calm the situation. That could be from voice, actions, distance, having a neutral face, showing non-judgment, not reacting. There are many ways to do this, and I'm sure you have a very special style that works. If anything that you do further inflames your child, give your child space by leaving the room for a predetermined amount of time. Communicate this set time to your child. Let your child know that you'll be doing something else, or just be silent until they stop. Try something like this. Okay, Billy, I realize that anything I do is making you more upset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be in the kitchen washing dishes. Let me know when you're ready. I'll be there. A bonus tip is not to give your child too much of the spotlight. If we make some kind of a spotlight feeling or make it too much of a big deal, they feel shame, and this can make the meltdown and the tantrum worse. I'll be adding an example of what the spotlight looks like and touch more on that. So be open to that YouTube video. It is very important to know what the function of the emotional meltdown is. Function is a word that you'll be seeing me say a lot. Cornerstone and ThoughtCo, we have links to their articles in the description on the podcast. If you're following us here on YouTube, we have links to those articles in the description. Cornerstone and ThoughtCo put it beautifully in their blog article. We cover the functions of behavior in many of our blog articles. For instance, check out our article on kids saying bad words, where we cover more about behavioral functions more in detail. Tip 3, communicate with your child. Have a plan. Use your parenting strengths to communicate the transitions from the desired activity into the next one. We have a blog article on parenting styles if you would like to learn more and find out what type of parenting style you have and what comes most natural for you. For those following us on YouTube, link to that article in the description. For those listening to us on the podcast, a link to that article is in the description. You know your child. I bet you do. You know her personality and tendencies, so prepare for the reaction and be ready to respond. Check on your presence, level of patience, and vocal tone. Let us know in the comments if you want a video or blog, or maybe even both, on response ideas. We will come up with a list and post. Provide reasoning. As parents, we feel very busy and we want results immediately, but we can't rush this type of stuff. Educating the child really helps. You can't just make a tantrum go poof and go away. Children actually do very well with knowing the why. If you tell them the why before they ask it, it really helps the child. A real, logical, and rational why is what usually works the best. Billy, I know you're upset that we have to leave the park, but it's going to get dark in about 20 minutes. Even if we stay here, you can't really truly enjoy it. You can even go a little further and surround the why around family values. This is even better. Family values help ground home activities and a healthy home structure in a consistent manner, and consistency is key. We have a blog article on family values. It's in the description of the podcast. For those following us on YouTube, we have a link to that article in the description. So we crafted a little simple communication formula. Let us know in the comments how it worked for you if you try it out. How to talk to your child when a tantrum occurs. First, have the child gain awareness of the behavior. Sometimes children just get into the behavior immediately, and they're not being really self-aware. What we can do is help them with that self-awareness of what they're doing. And I'm not joking here. If a child is banging on a desk or screaming, simply just say, okay, you're screaming right now, or you're banging really hard on that desk. Helping with a child with self-awareness of the behavior is a great place to start. It's not going to stop the temper tantrum, but what it will do is have the child be aware of their behavior in the moment. Then they can reflect on it later. To start, have the child gain awareness of the behavior. Number 2, empathize with your child about the behavioral response, but don't give in. Number 3, practice a healthy coping skill to replace the unhealthy one. So let's go through these more in detail in order. Starting with number 1, have the child gain awareness of the behavior. Here, sensitively, let your child know what you are seeing. Mention the observable tantrum behavior in a non-shameful way. If they're banging on a table or screaming really loudly, just simply mentioning it is very helpful for the child. It's not going to stop the temper tantrum immediately. It won't stop it there. But what they can do is reflect as to what they're doing in the moment, because that's what they're doing. They're performing an unwanted coping mechanism. And what we could do is just educate them as to what they are doing in the moment, putting it in words. So if they're banging on the table, you could simply say, okay, Billy, you're banging really hard on that table. And if they're screaming, you can simply say, ouch, Susie, you're screaming, and that's pretty loud. Number 2 was empathize with your child about that behavioral response, but don't give in. Let your child know that you know also it is not fun to set aside that activity or the thing she wanted. Let her know that this happens to you as well. Humanize it. Make it normal. We're all part of the same game. While empathizing with her, slide in that healthier coping skill and don't give in. So if you wanted to use the online toy example in this case, we can go something like this. I know you're upset that you can't get that toy that you really want, but this happens to me as well, and it's part of life. Remember when mommy wanted to go to Hawaii for vacation but work didn't let her? I was upset too. Then this is the perfect time to slide in that healthier coping skill, which is number 3. Practice a healthier coping skill to replace the unhealthy one. Tantrums, like we said, can be aggressive. Raising voices, making noises, banging, shutting down, hiding, crying. There are certainly many flavors. The key is to replace the unwanted coping skill with a healthier coping mechanism. I'm not joking. There are tons of healthier coping skills. In fact, the more creative we are as parents, the more coping skills there are that we can educate our children with. Coping skills equip the child with tools to manage the tantrum so that it is less frequent and less intense. Here are some common coping skills for when children are having that temper tantrum. Counting backwards from 10. This is a pretty famous one. Deep breaths. This one's really good for breathing and relaxing and calming. The noodle. For those listening to us on the podcast, we have more information on the noodle, article in the description. For those of you on YouTube, we have an article in the description of this video about the noodle, more in detail. Squeezing a ball. It could be a tennis ball, a racket ball, a stress ball. You can go outside and pull grass, pull weed. You can take a ball, go to the park and kick it as far as you want. There are also some very unique coping skills that I've seen work. I've seen this firsthand. Sometimes you don't want to do the squeezing the ball or counting backwards for 10 or the noodle. These are pretty common ones, but sometimes we want to do something a little more unique, or sometimes we want something else in our tool bag. Here's an example. I like this one a lot because it's very visual and it's very mental. Think of a memory which is soothing for you. Visualize a soothing place. Here, let's go outside and say hello to the trees and feel the air. For me personally, when I was a kid, that would have worked. Note that healthy coping skills are limitless. As long as you have some well-grounded family values and creativity, you'll be unstoppable. 4, consistency is key. Consistency. Consistency is very important. Even if you are successful once, structure is not set until there is consistency. If things don't go right, again, don't be disenchanted. Try it again and again and again. Tinker around, experiment, get what works. Build a consistency. Just stick to it. You can't lose 15 pounds in one day. You can't build Rome in one day. Structure and tantrum management is definitely the same. We have a bonus tip for you, and this is very important. Whatever you do, do not reward the emotional meltdown. I will repeat, Do not reward the emotional meltdown. Do not reward the emotional meltdown. Do not reward the emotional meltdown. Say it with me. Do not reward the emotional meltdown. If they have a tantrum, don't give them that toy. If they want an ice cream and they have a tantrum, don't give them that ice cream. If they want to play video games for 15 minutes longer and they get a tantrum, don't give them that 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't reward the emotional meltdown. Whew. I had to get that out of my system. Giving your child a reward reinforces the bad behavior. So that means we are making it more likely that they will tantrum again. This is definitely not the goal. For example, don't give ice cream to your child to stop their temper tantrum. Ice cream is the reward. You want to stop the temper tantrum. That's not the way to do it. Don't reward the emotional meltdown. Chances are she really likes ice cream. So giving ice cream for her to stop the temper tantrum is like saying, oh, you're having an emotional meltdown. That's so great. Here's some ice cream. Tip number 5, one of my favorites. Reflect with your child. Revisit the experience when your child is calm and centered. This is probably my favorite tip in this article. When you use your awareness skills and find that your child is calm and in a good place, reflect with her. This could be on a relaxing drive on the way back home in the evening. It could be the next day at the park. Mention that you understand what is fun and important to her, and mention that though it is hard to set it aside, it is more important to practice the value of balance, fairness, responsibility, or whichever family value you choose to highlight. These moments of reflection are great because your child is calm and the stressor is not near. It is a way to bond and communicate an important lesson in a safe and trusting manner. Children feel safe in these moments, and there is less of a chance for them to feel shameful or like they made a mistake. Conclusion, timing, and coping skills are key. Make sure you as a parent are in a good space. The tantrum creates a visceral emotion, and if you're not prepared mentally for the communication, the tone, the replacement activity, the replacement coping skill, and consistency, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Use the reflection tip. Your parenting judgment and timing is an amazing tool. These tools can be very helpful and can aid in your child making a better decision when the situations rise again. Leave a comment if you're able to take away something positive from this article. Leave a comment especially if you have a healthy replacement coping skill to share with everyone. What is a healthy temper tantrum coping skill which works for your child? Share that. I'd like to hear from you. What are some tips you use for yourself to stay calm and collected when helping your child through a temper tantrum? I'm sure there are a lot of parents that want to know that as well. If you tried the reflection tip that I shared at the end, comment and let us know how it went. I'm curious. Subscribe to this channel, subscribe to our podcast, and learn more about what we do at AuX Family Dynamics. Stay in tune with our latest videos, our latest materials, our latest blog articles, and say hello. Thanks for being here and for being a Gold family.